This show has been brought to you by Smith's Detection and the National Air Traffic Controllers Association.
My voice is the voice that guides you home safely each and every day.
24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
I am the voice of the safest and most efficient airspace in the world.
I have to be 100% of the time.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a professional air traffic controller.
Hi, I'm Brad Van Dam, and today we go one-on-one with Roger Dow, the President and CEO of U.S. Travel Association. Roger has been the head of U.S. Travel since 2005, and he served 34 years at Marriott International before that, his latest position being Senior Vice President of Global and Field Sales. So Roger is a well-respected voice up on Capitol Hill for all things related to travel and tourism. Roger, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
Well, Brad, great to be with you.
A lot of our folks, a lot of our viewers know firsthand about what work U.S. Travel does. But for those who might not be familiar with the association, tell us a little bit about the organization, who your members are, and what some of your key priorities and objectives are throughout the year.
Great. Our association, U.S. Travel, is real simple. We represent the whole of the travel industry. So it'd be airports, airlines, hotels, the attractions, 400 or 500 destinations like Las Vegas and the Finger Lakes, all the state tourism offices, payment systems, the orbits is all. And very simply, we have one mission, and that's to get more people traveling either to the United States or within the United States. And a lot of our priorities are very similar to yours, and it's how to get people through airports, TSA, visa issues, Customs and Border Protection people. They're really big on our plate right now.
Great. We have a bunch of similar priorities, as you just pointed out. A number of large airports have joined U.S. Travel as part of a Gateway Airports Council. Tell us a little bit about that new partnership and what you think some of the benefits are going to be about that expanded relationship.
Well, we've now got 12 of the largest airports and growing. It'll probably grow to about 20 is my guess, of the largest gateway airports. And they basically came to us to say, hey, the association that we have does all the right things for us on all the things that are important, but we like also what you're doing on the visa and Customs Border Protection. We can use more oomph and more voice. So they've joined us, and I think with them now joining us, it takes issues and makes them not just airport issues, but makes them travel issues, because what affects an airport travel affects the whole industry. So they've come on board, and we're focusing very strongly on those issues of getting people through airports, getting the passenger facility fees, getting the infrastructure built and all of that. And it's a great addition because we have the whole travel industry, but when we put together in a destination the airport, the CVB, and the corporate events that are there, or companies that are there, it really gives us a lot of leverage together.
That's great. I think from our perspective, the more people working together, especially in this climate up on Capitol Hill, all the better. So we're excited about that relationship. Look forward to working with you and your talented team over there. So I think that's going to be great. One of the big issues that we've been facing up on Capitol Hill is this sequestration process that you're very familiar with. Earlier this year, Congress passed a bill that thankfully ended controller furloughs, kept open about 149 contract towers throughout the country, and we're pleased by that. Unfortunately, lawmakers did so by taking about $250 million out of funding set aside for airport infrastructure projects. Are you concerned about the long-term impacts that sequestration could have on airports and tourism, especially given the fact that that was just round one and we are likely to face additional rounds as this process continues? Give us your take on that.
It's something, Brad, we're very concerned with, and we were shoulder to shoulder with you on fighting that issue. And fortunately, as you said, at the last minute, they blinked and said they're not going to do it. We look at it and say, hey, it doesn't make sense to do across-the-board cuts and take critical things like airport, FAA, and all that, and slice them the same as you would maybe someone that's in a bookkeeping role or whatever that you could get done in a different way. So as we looked at it, I think they're going to save about $200 million with these furloughs and all that. Our chief economist did the numbers and said, hey, that could cost us $90 billion to the U.S. economy. Makes no sense. So again, together we pushed it back, and but as you said, the problem is they took a short-term fix against a long-term solution with infrastructure, which is so critical and going to become more so. And then the other thing we're concerned about with these furloughs is what happens to TSA, Customs and Border Protection that's woefully understaffed, and to make that worse. So we're keeping an eye on this and asking the government to, hey, give these people the ability to make the right cuts and keep critical things in place, and especially small airports. I have a home in St. Petersburg, Florida, and that was one of the airports that was going to get closed down and then last minute saved. So it's very critical, especially to the small regional markets.
You brought up the CBP issue. That's a huge issue of concern to the gateway airports and the long lines at customs points of entry. And especially now with sequestration cuts, trying to get funding for CBP inspectors is even a harder issue. You released a study earlier this year that talked about the impact that these long lines are having on travel to the United States. Tell us a little bit about some of those findings. It's pretty eye-opening from our perspective.
Well, we did some research to say, what is the impact? And we asked people who have gone through Customs and Border Protection about their experience and what they thought. We found 40% said they thought it was inefficient, they thought lines were too long, it could be done better. And we're not talking about the good people at CBP. They do a fabulous job. The problem is, I say it's like having one cashier at Costco during the holidays. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. We're all working to widen the funnel at the top and get more people coming to this country. Inbound tourism is growing phenomenally, but yet they're budget constrained. So it's a major problem. And we've been working again together on a couple of solutions. One, we're asked the president to put in his budget, if the budget ever gets passed of some kind, 1,000 CBP officers. They put 3,000 in. In the Senate bill that's going through on immigration, there's a provision in there for 3,500. And we have to watch that closely because it's 3,500 CBP officers. And let's say it does get passed, we got to make sure a lot of them go to the airports because there's going to be pressure to put them on the land borders and things like that. So we want to make sure that we stay vigilant, get those officers that are well needed, but make sure a good number go to the airports because they're really needed there.
And obviously the economic impact of that is huge. I mean, it would obviously more than pay for itself if you were to devote some resources to enough CBP inspectors. The economic impact of the tourism and travel industry is huge. It's
one of the biggest no-brainers I've seen. And travel always goes to what is the easiest way. So if travel becomes difficult of getting into JFK, Miami, LA, O'Hare, what are people going to do? They're going to go to Vancouver. They're going to go to Montreal. They're going to go elsewhere. They're going to go to other countries. We had some 34% people said if they knew that our airports were smoother and easier to get through when they arrived in the country, they would take more trips here. They're telling their friends, don't go. The average person is telling 4 and 5 people, don't go. The process is too much trouble. Well, that just doesn't impact the airport, the whole economy of what they spend, the business they come to do. So it's a critical issue, and the economics it was a real eye-opener of people saying, I'm flat not going back.
That should be an incentive enough right there to try to resolve that issue,
Yeah.
I would think. So that's good work on your part, so thanks for undertaking that study. You were up on Capitol Hill recently talking about that very issue when you testified before the House Energy and Commerce Committee. You also brought up the visa waiver issue. Tell us a little bit about that program, why it's so important from your perspective, and what Congress can do to improve it.
Great. Visa waiver, one, it's a bad name because it sounds like we're looking the other way, which we're not. When a country goes in the visa waiver program, they have to sign all sorts of treaties with the United States of allowing the U.S. to have access to their security systems, who they're vetting. If someone loses a passport or it gets stolen, they've got to report it in 24 hours. It actually increases security, but the name visa waiver has people down the hill in Congress thinking we're looking the other way. It was set up, visa waiver was set up where you don't need anything but a passport. You don't need a visa for 27 countries in the mid-1980s to stimulate trade internationally. No other countries were added for like 20 years. We've been successful in getting 10 new countries added. So now there's 37 visa waiver countries. Among the biggest was just added was South Korea. And let me tell you what happened. When South Korea went into the program, 18 months later, visitation from South Korea went up 46%. It's like turning on a faucet. And the challenge is these folks from South Korea, Brazil, are not terrorists, and their economies are strong, and they're going to return home. The numbers, I call it the law of large numbers. The same number that go back now will continue to go back, and so we've got to work on that. And the opportunity we're looking at, part of this immigration bill and something called the Jolt Act, is to get visa waiver status for Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Poland, Israel, so countries like that don't pose a threat to us but have huge pent-up demand of people that want to come here.
Obviously some of our allies there and some countries who we would like to see more visitors coming to the United States.
Phenomenal opportunity.
Yeah.
If we take, let's take Brazil. There's 1.7 million Brazilians that come here and spend $5,000 each. They love America. Their economy is booming. There's only 4 or 5 places they can go for their visa interview right now. They were waiting up to 3 months. We got the time pounded down to now 5 days. But they were waiting up to 3 months for a 3-minute interview to come here. If they behave like the South Koreans, which they will probably behave even more so because they really want to come here and go to places like Florida and Texas and California, that'll probably add 800,000 new visitors spending $5,000 each within the next year of them becoming visa waiver. So it's very, very important and huge for our economy.
Earlier we talked about long lines at CBP points of entry. Another way that we can reduce lines at security checkpoints is through the PreCheck program that TSA has. Like AAAE, U.S. Travel Association has been a big proponent of trying to expand that PreCheck program. We would like to have airports participate in the enrollment process to try to get more people involved. Give us your take on the program and what you think Congress can do to try to expand that program, get more people involved in it.
One, I really applaud Administrator Pistol of coming forward and saying, hey, we've got to have a risk-based program. I mean, you and I and all of your members are not the next Mohammed Atas. So the bottom line is we've got history, and we should profile people based on travel habits, based on background, based on never being arrested, all those kinds of things that you and I should be able to just walk through an airport clearly. So PreCheck was a great start. As you know, it started in 4 airports. It's now expanded to 40. That's terrific. The problem is it was started as an airline frequency program. So if you're a huge traveler with United Airlines and you're in PreCheck, no problem in Chicago. You go to Atlanta, they don't know who you are, and because the systems aren't talking. So we're pushing, as you are, is to try and get PreCheck to be one where people could register and enroll at airports, where it's really a information-based system, not if you have 100,000 or 70,000 miles on an airline, but what your travel habits are, and expand it bigger. Because it's just like HOV lanes. I was just at the airport this morning, and you see the PreCheck lane that just has a couple of people in it, but they still have to have the resources there, and the other line's backing up. And we're saying, hey, if we can get more people in that PreCheck lane, all the better. And the other great program, of course, is Global Entry. Now, I do know, I've heard Administrator Pistol said this October they're coming out with a PreCheck program that's very much like Global Entry. That's going to be background security based, and I think that's going to be a huge plus, and we should all work to try and get people in there. And I think signing people at the airports makes all the sense in the world, because that's where they see the pain. They're at an airport, they see it, and they say, you know, it's like that when you're in Chicago, there's a train and it goes by and says, if you're on this train, you could be home by now. And I think the same thing at airports, saying, hey, if you're in PreCheck, you'd be through by now.
Right, and it's so much more important now, especially when we're facing budget cuts up on Capitol Hill. If we can get more people through the system by using PreCheck, obviously that mitigates some of the long lines and staffing issues that we faced on the TSA side.
Right.
We talked about CBP, PreCheck, visa waiver. Talk to us a little bit about some of the other initiatives you're undertaking this year as it relates to transportation and aviation in specific.
Okay. One of the big issues that we're looking at, and you've been on the forefront with you folks, in fact I just saw it in your recent magazine, is infrastructure. And to be talking about, if you just let's take a look at the numbers. Now, domestic travel has kind of stayed flat the past couple of years, but if you look at international visitation, the president's called for 100 million international visitors by 2021. We did about 60 million last year, okay? So that's a 40 million increase. That's a 5.4% increase year after year. Well, the challenge is we're growing last year and the year before at almost 7%. So we're growing 25% faster than the 100 million. So think what happens if you put 40 million new people on the airlines. I had our chief economist take a look at a couple airports. JFK, it's going to add another 14 million travelers a year. Miami, LA, another 10 or 11 million. So I said, what's that? Let's look at peak hours. During the peak hours, JFK, it's about 5,000 new travelers in line an hour. Miami, LA. Can you imagine Miami, LA, JFK with another 5,000 people at 6 and 7 o'clock at night for those internet? It'll be crazy. People coming in from those flights, so in the mornings and all that. So it's critical. And the other thing, we did some research and we said, what can they actually handle? We worked with the Enos Transportation Group, which you work with, I know a lot, and they did a study for us, and they said, most likely about 14 million of that 40 million people just won't be able to fit. It's like, pretty soon the restaurant or the movie theater is full, and we're going to be turning those people away. It's also going to give us a problem on capacity to be able to get slots and gates where, CBP has already pushed back several times in different airports and saying, we can't take that new flight from South Korea. We can't take that new flight from Australia. And all this is going on because everyone's trying to get through at the same time. So we've got this funnel blocked. So that's a huge issue for us. Another issue for us is we've got a new thing called travel effect. And we looked at what the Wine Institute has done. And the Wine Institute is basically about 10, 15 years ago, did a lot of research and said, if you have one glass of wine a day, your chance of having a heart attack go down by like 12%. A couple years later, they had more research, 2 glasses, 22%. I'm trying to get to 100%. I haven't gotten there yet. But I said, what would happen if that would happen with travel? So with this travel effect program, we're starting to launch, and this is a multi-year program, not just for next 6 months, and trying to work together and get research done by whether it be Mayo Clinic, health-oriented people, family relationships, to show, which we both know intuitively, this is a fact, that when you travel, you're more productive. When you're face-to-face, you're going to get the deal versus somebody that's sending an email. Relationships, when you go away, you take that 2 and 3 day time away with your spouse, the relationships are stronger. You know that, or you wouldn't go away. And I think the big one is health. We've seen studies already that people that get away for more than 2 weeks a year are less prone to have a heart attack. And lastly, I think the big one is education. Children who travel with their families are going to be much more prone to want to look at bigger picture in life, see more of life, go to secondary education. So travel effect is a thing we're working on. We want to work with you folks and so many others to grow the pie and get more people traveling because that's our mission.
You said that families should do away with the big screen TVs and invest that money in travel instead.
I really think so, and I think especially when we look at education, if we can get mothers, and mothers are very important, to begin saying, hey, if Johnny or Susie go on a trip with us this summer, I read and saw research that they're much more likely to succeed in life, much more likely to be more curious and want to go for a bigger job or go to college. And I think once mothers begin realizing that, they're going to say, hey, we're going to hold off on that big screen. We're going on vacation. And it doesn't have to be a trip to Paris or a trip across the country. You can go to a national park. You can take a little trip. You can fly to Philadelphia from Washington, go see the Liberty Bell. But those kind of things, and they bring relationships together. My wife, when our children are growing up, or one's getting married in a couple of weeks and my daughter's 27, my wife said, we're going to really build our family around memories. And I think back and I talk to my children, I talk to you or me or anybody, what do you remember? Your earliest memories are the fish you caught with your grandfather on vacation, the time you went away with your family to Disney World or Disneyland or whatever, and it brings families together. So I think there's a huge story for us to tell, and we haven't told it, and I think it's a huge opportunity to grow the pie.
And then you talked a lot about the family side. On the business side, you've been a big proponent of meetings, which oftentimes get a dirty word, especially in Washington, D.C. How important is it that you have these face-to-face meetings?
It's extremely important. When you take a look at, especially in today's technology, where it seems I dash off an email and I get things accomplished, but getting together face-to-face and at meetings and conventions, and often we just look at the amount of business that's done around meetings, and we just track the airline spending, the airport spending, the hotels and all that. We don't even track the deals that are being done by conventions and trade shows when people go there and buy products. I think it's important. We just did some research with Oxford Economics, and it came out that said when you take a business trip, go to a meeting or whatever, for every $9 or $10 you spend, you end up getting back. For every dollar you spend, you end up getting $9 back in productivity and in revenue, probably about $250 in profits. So, and we looked at companies that said, if I'm not out there meeting, are you risking market share? 40% of sales executives said to us, if I'm not out in the market, face to face with my clients, I'm going to lose share. And the bright companies are saying, we just can't, just like we talked back with FAA, we can't cut across the board. We've got to look at this thing called a meeting and what it really adds value. Now, we do have the problem of some meetings around government haven't been too good, so they get the spotlight gets shined on, that character from GSA that was in the bathtub and all that, and the easy thing is the knee jerk and say we'll do no meetings, but the productivity, I mean. Meetings are adult education. I keep saying the way that you're going to learn better practices, the way you're going to learn the things that are really good to get done and increase your business, you're going to be face to face. You're not going to go for another college degree, but at the meetings is where you learn. And if you're staying home, you can do the same old thing.
Well, I know you're headed off to Las Vegas for your International Powwow, another big conference that you put on every year, so we appreciate you taking time to be with us today.
Well, it's great, and the partnership we have, I think, is phenomenal. As I say, 1 + 1 = 3 or 4 or 5 here. Thanks a lot.
Well, we look forward to working with you throughout the year and are grateful that you've joined with our Gateway Airports, and we look forward to a productive relationship,
Great.
So thank you for that.
Thanks, Brad.
And that's all for this issue of One on One. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.